Hey, what's going on YouTube? Welcome back to another video. I am Chad, the Reseller Rockefeller. Today, we're actually going to be talking about jewelry. We're going to be finishing up the second part to the last video that I uploaded, all about jewelry. So if you're into buying jewelry and selling jewelry, or you just want to learn more about the jewelry business, this is the video that you should watch. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you like the video, and go check me out on social media, IG and Twitter. Listen, everybody wants to buy jewelry. I know so many resellers that deal in other, niches like video games or electronics, antiques, collectibles. Most people want to get into the jewelry business. They want to be able to buy and sell the stuff when they find it out at yard sales or estate sales. But most people, they just don't have the knowledge or the education to understand how to determine what's real, what's fake, what should I be looking for, and that's exactly what I'm trying to help you out with. I know that most people out there, they could care less about videos like this. They don't like my videos. They don't like the way I look or the way that I talk. I completely understand that. I'm not here to appease or please everybody. I'm just trying to help those that want some help and that, are looking to up their game or build their knowledge. When I was, first started buying and selling stuff, if I had somebody that I could watch, even if I didn't, believe in everything they said, or maybe I didn't, I didn't care to learn everything the person was preaching or talking about. Even if I could just learn one little thing from each video, it would have saved me so many headaches back when I first started reselling. It would have saved me a whole bunch of time because I had to put so much time and effort into learning all of this stuff before, there was YouTube videos so popular about reselling. I focused a lot on reading books and looking through books, and I did a lot of research online, but there was lots and lots of hours of tons of research just to get to the point to, where I'm at today. That's why I have so much knowledge. I know so much about so many different things, is because I've spent the majority of my life learning about all kinds of stuff. Now, I might not be the best video maker. I might not be the best editor. Maybe my sound isn't that good. Maybe my appearance isn't that good. But there's one thing that I have, and that's something that most resellers don't, is I have a crap ton of knowledge. I know a lot about everything, and that's what makes me the successful reseller I am today. I go to yard sales, I go to estate sales, and I kill it. I'm not trying to brag, but I make a successful living on on eBay because of the knowledge that I have. I'm able to go to yard sales and I'm able to find and buy stuff that other resellers just wouldn't even think about. And then I'm able to sell those items for, 15, 20 times what I've paid for it. That's a successful reseller. Now, I know there's tons of resellers out there that are killing it in the game. Trust and believe, I know that. I have tons of friends of mine that are resellers, and I have a bunch of people that I talk to on a regular basis that are killing it in the game. There is tons of knowledge out there already, but most people are only preaching and talking about certain niches. And that's one thing that I stay away from. I don't like to be anchored down within one niche. I don't like to restrict my business. I want to be able to go out and literally source at a yard sale or at a estate sale, a flea market, a thrift store, and I want to be able to buy clothing, electronics, gold, silver. I want to be able to look at art, antiques, collectibles, you name it, I can buy it because I have the knowledge to actually know what's valuable, what's not valuable, what will sell, what's not gonna sell. And that's the thing that I think a lot of resellers these days just don't understand. They just believe in, this reseller on YouTube talks about buying clothing. That's what he's successful in. That's what I'm seeing all over the place. There's so many YouTube channels about clothing. The reason that is there is a bunch of clothing sellers because clothing is readily available. It's all over the place. It's at every thrift store, every yard sale, every flea market. You can get it for free sometimes. Clothing is everywhere. And that's the reason why there's so many clothing sellers, because people like to, go to things or choose things that is easy to find, easy to research, easy to understand. If you wanted to get into a reselling business and you didn't want to have to put, hours and hours and hours of building your knowledge about that niche, clothing is the #1 go-to niche. And that's because of it, it doesn't take rocket scientists to figure clothing out. You learn the brands, you learn what's selling, and you go out and you source those items. You got to understand that there's so much more out there in the reselling community. There's so much more to be bought. There's so much more. That's the one thing that I don't understand why people can't see, that there's so much out there, this entire country full of items. I mean, there is tons of stuff. I couldn't sit here and name 1/10 of how much stuff is out there to buy. But what I see happening is resellers are restricting their business to one little itty-bitty niche. And I'm not saying that it won't work. Don't get me wrong. I know that you can make a reselling business work within one niche, but I'm asking, and it's a legitimate question, why would you? Why would you restrict your business and focus within one niche when you could be the master of all niches, and you could build your knowledge and build your wealth and build your business on being the best reseller, going out there, sourcing and finding anything and everything that you can buy and resell for more money. So I'm the Reseller Rockefeller, and we're about to jump right into this video about jewelry. So let me show you. The first thing that we're going to start off with is Rolexes. And the reason that we're going to talk about this today, I actually wasn't even going to talk about it today, but I had a friend of mine about 6 months ago contacted me, all excited, super happy that he purchased his first Rolex. Now this guy has been a reseller for about 3.5 years, fairly knowledgeable when it comes down to video games, electronics, somewhat clothing, but he doesn't really buy and sell jewelry. But for the past, I would say maybe year, he started to learn a little bit about jewelry. He started to actually buy and sell it, and it's been very successful for him. But he ended up going to a garage sale, and a gentleman had a Rolex. Now this Rolex looks pretty darn good. Obviously I haven't seen the watch in person, so maybe by just looking at it, holding it in your hand, I would have been able to determine that it was fake from the get-go. But by the photographs that he sent me, the watch looks legit. It looks like a real Rolex. Everything kind of looks right, but that's not the case. The watch turned out to be fake, and it really ruined this guy. I mean, this guy really felt really bad about it because, when you're buying items like that, he didn't really spend a ton of money, but he did spend enough money to where, he felt it. I think he ended up spending roughly $450, $500, and he was thinking that he was going to be able to sell the watch for around $2,000 to clear a $1,500 profit or so. And that just wasn't the case. And so that's why I want to talk about Rolexes today, because I want to try to help people, and give you enough knowledge to where you're going to be able to determine if a Rolex is real or fake just by holding it, looking at it, and knowing a few key things to be on the lookout for. And also, I always recommend people to not just take my word for it, to always go online, always do your own research. I'm just giving you some upfront information and some advice and some tips. Take what I'm saying to you and run with it. Start learning more about watches, start investigating more about gold and silver, and start building your knowledge so you can be the best reseller out there in today's world of resellers. So anyways, let's jump right over to it. We're going to move the camera and over here where I'm going to show you some jewelry. I'm going to show you the watches, and we're going to talk about jewelry. We're going to talk about costume jewelry, gold, silver, and diamonds. So let's jump right into it. Okay, so here we go. Let's start this off with the two Rolexes that you see in front of you. Now, one of these Rolexes is actually fake, and the other Rolex is real. I don't know if you can determine which one is real and which one is fake by looking at it through this camera, but I'm going to show you a few things that you can be on the lookout for when you're out at yard sales, estate sales, thrift stores, flea markets, or even on Craigslist, Let Go, OfferUp, Facebook Marketplace. You never know when you're going to be able to come across something like a Rolex. I've actually purchased Rolexes before off of Craigslist, and they've turned out to be real. You just have to know what you're looking at. you have to know how to determine which one is real and which one is fake. So let's take a look at both of these watches. This one is obviously stainless steel, and it has gold, and it has a gold bezel, and it's got some diamonds. It says Rolex, Oyster Perpetual, date just. If you look at the markings in there, I don't know if the camera is going to focus or not. Try to get the camera to focus on this watch. There you go. So you can kind of get an idea of what it looks like. Now, one of the big things that you always want to look for when you're looking at a Rolex, you want to flip it over and immediately examine the actual bracelet, the actual band. You want to look at the markings on there. You want to see, you know, how much detail is in the watch. Rolex is a very high-end watchmaker, and, you know, they take pride in their watches. So you want to look at everything. The bezel, you want to look how, you know, good it's done. You want to look at all of the details. You want to look at the back of the watch. Now, this watch appears to have had a sticker on the back, and that's kind of a clear giveaway because, you know, Rolexes usually don't put stickers on their watches. But one of the big main giveaways immediately when you pick up a Rolex is the weight of the Rolex, the actual weight of the watch. And that's what we're going to be talking about right now, is the weight of these two watches. Now, when you pick up this watch here, this watch just weighs a lot more. And it feels a lot more, you know, it feels like quality. Now, if you look at the detail of the band, let's go ahead and open it up. And you look at the detail of all of the markings, how good the band is. Now, one thing also is, listen to this noise. I don't know if you could hear that through the camera, but I'm hoping that the sound came through. So now let's shake the one on the left. Hopefully you can actually hear that. This watch is extremely cheap feeling. It feels very light, and it has a lot of flex, lots of, like, you know, just noises that you shouldn't really hear when shaking a real Rolex. This watch feels like quality. So let's go ahead and bring the scale over here, and let's actually weigh these watches and see how much of a difference in weight there actually is in the two watches. Okay, so we're at the scale. Let's go ahead and put this watch on the scale first. And it looks like this watch weighs 2.5 ounces. So I'm not weighing these in grams, I'm weighing these in ounces, and I'm actually using just a regular postal scale. So it's pretty accurate. I mean, I wouldn't consider it to be as accurate as a small digital scale, but for this experiment, this is perfectly fine. So this watch weighs 2.5 ounces. Now, this is the one that has the diamonds, it has the gold. This is the one that feels real light. It doesn't feel like quality. It had a sticker on the back of it. Somebody removed it. But, you know, most resellers, if you weren't knowledgeable, you would think that this watch was real. Now let's go ahead and put this watch on the scale, and let's see how much it weighs. So as you can see, this watch weighs quite a bit more, you know, almost double what this watch weighs over here. This watch is actually real. This is a 2007. This is a Oyster Perpetual. This is a date just. This is actually my personal watch. This is the watch that I wear on a regular basis. This is real, and this one is fake. So let's talk about some key features, key little things that you can look for when looking at a Rolex watch. Alrighty, so the first thing that we're going to talk about, and once again, I want everybody to understand that I am no expert. I'm not a jeweler. I'm not a Rolex expert. I'm not, I'm not a watchmaker. So, pretty much, I'm just a knowledgeable reseller that, knows a little bit about watches because I have spent years and years buying and selling these watches. And I don't want people out there to make the same mistakes that I've made and the same mistakes that friends of mine have made. And, just a little bit of knowledge can actually save your butt. So this is the first thing that I always look for when it comes down to an actual watch. I'm trying to get this light to actually adjust. The first thing that I look for, obviously, when I pick up a watch, is the weight of it. A quality watch, it doesn't matter if it's a Rolex or not. You could be picking up any watch, a Petit Philippe, any real, high-end watch. When you pick the watch up, it should feel like you're holding a quality watch. If it feels very cheap in the hand, the materials feel cheap, the way that the band moves left and right, the way that the clasp clicks, everything should feel real quality. Now, you might be asking, well, what do you mean by quality, Chad? I don't know what quality means. I just mean, just use your natural instincts of, does it feel like you're holding a quality watch? Also, use your gut instincts. Your body, your hands, your brain, and your gut can tell you a lot, especially when you're holding something like a watch. Just feel it. Hold it in your hand. Open and close the clasp. Do that repetitively, over and over again, and see, does it feel different every time you do it? Or does it feel like the same exact snap every time? Also, another thing that you can look at immediately is the little magnifier. So if you're holding a Rolex that has a magnifier, some of them do not come with it. Right behind that magnifier, it's going to be showing you the date. If that magnifier isn't really magnifying a lot, so like for instance, if you look at this magnifier, it's not really magnifying that much. You can see the date, but it's not really making the date, really big. It's just magnifying it a little bit. So that's one key thing to look at. Now look at this one. Look at how much it's magnifying the number 10. If you can see the number 10 through the crystal, and then when I turn it, look how much it magnifies the number 10. That's what you want to see. The other thing that you can look for, now this takes a little bit more of experience because some of the better replicas actually have a very nice sweeping second hand. You see that hand sweeping? Now some people would say that that isn't a go-to source for determining if this is a real watch or a fake watch. And I would have to, kind of agree with that because nowadays, some of the really high replicas actually have the hand that sweeps nice and smooth like a real authentic Rolex. So don't always go off of just how the hand sweeps. It seems like I see a lot of resellers, I talk with them on a regular basis. I see people out in public. I see people at yard sales. And it seems like every time, we talk about Rolexes, the first thing that people say is, oh yeah, I know how to determine if a Rolex is real. You look at the hands and see if the hands are sweeping, not ticking. And I understand that that is one of the ways to determine if a Rolex is real or not, but it's not the only way, and it's definitely not a for sure way, because some of the high-end replicas will actually have the hand sweeping in a very smooth motion and not, that doesn't mean it's real though. So let's look at just the details. That's one thing that you really need to understand about Rolex. They're not really gonna have any mess ups, okay? If you look at the back, it should be nice and clean. It should have a quality feel. The crown should be nice. The bezel, the crystal should feel good. Everything should look really good. Also, pay attention to the actual printing on the dial, where it says Rolex, where it says Oyster Perpetual Datejust. If you look, it's really hard to see in the camera, but the spacing between the letters, the spacing between each line, the amount of ink used, to put the Rolex Oyster Perpetual Datejust on there. It should be nice and dark, and it should be, you know, printed on there with a very good attention to detail if it's a real watch. It's really hard to see on camera, but when you hold these two watches in your hands, you can really feel the difference. You can really tell immediately which one is real and which one is fake. There is tons of other ways to kind of identify a real Rolex, but one of the most surefire ways is to just open up the back of the watch. That's one of the best ways, so let me go ahead and show you how that's done. Okay, so one of the best ways, obviously, to open up the back of a Rolex and plenty of other watches is to just buy an actual watch back opening kit. You want to buy one of these if you're going to be in the business of buying and selling watches. You don't want to sit there with a screwdriver and try to spin the back of the watch off, because all you're going to do is damage it. And if it is a real Rolex, that will actually decrease the value of the watch. So today, for the video purposes, we're not going to be pulling the back off this watch just because I don't want to. This is a watch that I wear on a regular basis. But, you know, you pull the back off of this and you're going to be able to look inside that watch, and usually if it's a real watch, you're going to be able to determine if it's real immediately. Like I said, you know, I'm not the end all. I would love for anybody that's watching this video to do some more research. Hopefully this video just motivates you to learn more about jewelry, to learn more about watches and gold and silver, things of that nature, because there is a lot of money to be made. You know, you don't want to pass up, you know, watches like this if you come across them at a yard sale or an estate sale, or even off of Craigslist, Let Go, OfferUp, Facebook Marketplace. You just don't want to pass stuff up like this, especially if you can get it for a good deal. Always remember, though, to, you know, protect yourself. Make sure you get their information. Make sure you get a picture of their photo ID. And make sure you always, you know, ask for a bill of sale and a receipt, whatever the case may be. Always protect yourself. You never want to get caught buying something that did not belong to the seller. So anyways, that's enough for the Rolexes. Hopefully you kind of get my idea here. There's always a few other things that you can do. Go online, type in how to determine if a Rolex is real or fake, and you will see tons of videos about this. And tons of, you know, experts actually giving advice and things of that nature. But I hope that this, you know, this gives you something to go on and you learn something from this. So let's move on to some jewelry and some silver stuff. Alrighty, so here is some actual jewelry. Now, some of this stuff is fake. Some of this stuff is real. We also have a pretty cool little box here that has some etchings in it, and it's got a, you know, like a wooding insert. Really nice little box. And on the bottom here, it has some markings. So we're going to talk a little bit about this. We're going to be talking about this jewelry also. So hopefully the camera is showing up good. I know it's hard to get a lot of detail. I am using my phone. My big camera is out of commission again. So let's go ahead and start with this piece. So obviously, you see this big piece. This is a pin. Now, when you flip over the piece, you can automatically tell that this is a piece of costume jewelry. You can just tell by the way that it, you know, the way that it looks, the way that it feels. There is no markings on it. This item isn't even signed by the, you know, the maker, so it's not even a signed piece of costume jewelry. You know, it's just some pin, not really sure what this means, some kind of crest or something. But you can just immediately tell that this is a piece of costume jewelry. Now, in my last video, I talked a little bit about items that are not marked. Now, that's a big thing. You need to start, you know, and I also mentioned it in my last video, you got to start becoming familiar with how gold feels and the way that gold is made. Also, you can, you know, teach yourself and educate yourself on the way that gold is actually made and casted into actual items. You know, there's methods into making costume jewelry, and there's different methods into making actual real jewelry, because different metals melt differently and they melt under different temperatures. So you can kind of look at costume jewelry, and when you flip it over, you can always see the way that this item is made Particularly doesn't look like something that would be made out of gold because of the way that it was casted. And you can see the markings on the back here from being casted. This is made out of some really cheap material, some sort of metal, probably some kind of lead because it's soft and I can bend it. But when you start to bend it, then the gold tone plating starts to crack. And you can kind of hear that as you bend it. So this is another piece of costume jewelry. So one piece that I really want to show you, this item here. Now when you look at something like this, it immediately feels a little different. The weight of the item feels different. But when you look at the back, a little bit different, right? Now you might would look at something like this and immediately think that this is a piece of costume jewelry, but this is actually solid gold. And so I'm going to show you a few ways that you can determine that by just looking at it. One of the ways is how it's made. This looks to be hand done. So, you know, this was actually made by a jeweler, and you can actually see on a few other pieces, which this is the charm, and I also have the earrings that go with it, the matching earrings. And one of the things that I'm going to show you on these earrings, if I can get the camera to actually focus, let's see if I can get the camera to focus on these earrings, is the tooling marks. So gold is a very soft metal, and you can tell that this was one piece of gold, and then they beat it with a hammer and stretched this part out to make these hanging loops. And if you look closely right there, you can see kind of little indentions, kind of little like, you know, cracks or crevices. And that's just from smoothing the gold out and actually hand making it. Those are the kind of key features that you kind of need to know, because if you didn't know that, you would pass this item up. You would not expect it to be gold. It has absolutely no marks on it. And if you look close at the detail here, you can tell that was hand done. You know, it just immediately screams old, and it immediately screams gold. But this was at an estate sale in a box of jewelry that was marked costume jewelry. So this gives you kind of an idea of why I buy and sell jewelry and why I like to educate myself and learn about stuff, because I bought the box of costume jewelry for 30 bucks, and altogether I forget exactly what this weighs, but it weighs quite a bit. So if you can see there again, look at those little spots. This is the sign of real gold. You can see those little crevets and, you know, indentions in the actual metal. And that is just simply from somebody taking a piece of, you know, solid gold and then heating it up and flattening it out with whatever little hand tools the jeweler used. Most likely some sort of like little hammer or something, and they probably used some heat to do it as well. That is a good example. And most resellers just wouldn't know that. Those items, you know, they just would pass it up at a yard sale or an estate sale, and they just wouldn't know that it was real. And that's why I want to educate people and show people and teach people how to, you know, find real gold, how to actually, what to look for, the difference in, you know, costume jewelry and fake jewelry. Now this is a pretty good looking piece here. This is one of the pieces that I find most people, you know, make mistakes on, because this looks real. The detail in the metal is good. The weight of the item is good. It feels like a good quality piece, but this is actually a gold-filled piece. And gold-filled just isn't really worth much. Now, I can still sell this item as a beautiful pin, but as, you know, when we're talking about gold and silver, we want the real stuff, not gold-filled. But this is probably the most, you know, probably the biggest mistake I see resellers buying is, you know, they find these kinds of items at yard sales and estate sales. They don't know the difference between the markings. They just see, you know, on the back it says 14 karat / you know, GF or whatnot. And they don't understand that. They think it's gold and they buy it, and it turns out to just be gold filled. And usually it's pins, it's earrings, sometimes charms and necklaces, but mostly pins and earrings. It seems that, you know, that's what I find resellers buying the most, not realizing that it just isn't real gold, or at least it isn't solid gold. All right, so let's look at some other items that are pretty interesting. So I don't know if the camera's going to focus in on this, but this is just a very small vintage little pin. It's like a screw back, and it has absolutely no markings. Now again, my knowledge and my, you know, understanding of gold and different metals, once I seen this, just the little tone, you become familiar with just, you know, looking at an item and just kind of seeing the color and the tone of the metal. And I immediately figured that it was gold. Sure enough, I, you know, did a scratch test with acid, and it turned out to be real gold. Now, this one doesn't weigh that much, so it's not really worth a whole lot. But this is just a prime example. You know, if you see a box full of, you know, pins and things and brooches and stuff at a yard sale, and it's full of stuff like this, and it's cheap, I would just buy it and then sort through it later in hopes that you find some real gold. You'll be, you know, surprised how many of these older vintage pins like this turn out to be actual gold, 14 or 10 karat most of the times. Every now and then you might run across an 18 karat one, but it's super rare. Most of the times, you know, they're 10 karat. Same with earrings. Most earrings are 10 karat. But, you know, obviously you find 14 and 18 karat too. But for the most part, the majority of the earrings that I buy are 10 karat. That's usually what they are. Another ones, obviously, are rings. You know, here's a nice ring that I got at a yard sale. I wish I could actually show the markings. Let's see if this camera will actually zoom in on the markings of these rings. Not really sure if it's going to. There we go. So you see this one has the little copyright symbol, and then it says JCM, and then it has the 10 karat stamped kind of deep into this ring. Now when you look at the quality of this ring, you know, you can just immediately tell that this is gold. Now, if you look on the side, see the little nicks and dings, and it's still nice and gold, that is a good sign. It shows that it's been worn, and it doesn't have any other color metals, you know, popping out. So this ring, if you were to find it at a yard sale or an estate sale, once you see that mark on the inside like that, you know, it's a giveaway that this ring is 100% real, and go ahead and buy it, snatch it up, because it's absolutely real. Now, you always want to test it though. Just because it's marked doesn't mean it's real. But when you see a marking that good, you know, that 10 karat is marked nice and straight, and it's right after the actual initial mark, and it just looks nice. It looks good. That's what a marking should look like. Let's move on to the next ring here. So you see how these stones are set. See how nice and, you know, even all of the stones are set. Now, when you look at these markings here, you're going to see a maker's mark just before the actual 14 karat mark. But again, look at the quality of the ring. Look at the nicks, the scratches. Look at how the stones are set. Look at how the stones, you know, were able to, the back of the stone area is able to breathe. That is all a clear sign of an actual jeweler who made this ring, and it's not a costume jewelry. These are key signs that you should always be looking for when you're looking at jewelry. Here's another prime example. Look at how the stones are set. Look at how nicely it's done. Again, we see that the back is open so the stones can breathe, but it's also for the cleaning process. So later on, you can actually get the ring cleaned and your stones will look good. This one has some little diamonds in the front, nothing real big or major. Let's take a look at the, I think this ring is marked. There's the mark. See how nice and deep the mark is? It's not just a 10 and a K kind of stamped into it. It's actually a 10 and a K stamped, but inside of like a little square. That's very common, for jewelers to use that kind of stamping machine, that's very common to see the little square around where the 10 and the K go. Let's look at some other examples. Now, this is a good example because, most people would just think that this was fake because of the way that this back part looks. It kind of looks cheap. And this is a good example because the back part here is, I think it's actually gold filled. See the marking there? 1/20, 12 karat gold filled. So the back here, the big round thing, is actually gold filled. But see the color tone difference between the Burger King sign and the actual back of the charm? See the difference in the color? That's why I wanted to show this to you guys. There is a huge difference in the color. Well, that's because this little piece here that actually says Burger King is actually real. It's 14 karat gold, and the diamonds are actually real as well. So this is a good example of how to determine, if gold is real. Look at that nice yellow gold tone of the Burger King sign, but look at the difference of the gold tone on this back piece. These are still good. These are still actually worth money. These sell really well for me. These are actually given to employees that work for Burger King for a certain amount of time. And so I think the 2 diamonds with the green stone means that it's 10 years maybe, or this one is 10 years, and then this one is, I'm not really sure. It might be 20 years, but yeah, this is the pin and this is the charm. That is, pretty cool item. So let's take a look at this box. Now this was, let me zoom out a little bit. This was purchased at an estate sale, and I'm not really sure, but I guess they just didn't look at the box. They didn't notice that it was clearly stamped right on the bottom here. Clearly stamped sterling, and then made in, and I can't make out where it was actually made in, but clearly stamped sterling, and you can see the quality of this box. This is actually a quality made box. I mean, look at the hinge work on that. Look at how this lines up nice and perfect. And then look at the etching in the front here. Now this etching right here is pretty much, I think, done by some sort of acid. And this etching here was done by hand. But yeah, it's a beautiful box. It has wood liner in it. It is just a very nice box. Probably won't go for that much money, but I think I paid like $4 or $5 for it. And I'll probably list it for $100, maybe a little bit more. Sterling silver isn't really worth that much, but this box has a lot of detail, and it's very nice. So anyways, yeah, this box, when you come across sterling items, especially, serving dishes, serving utensils, which is very common at yard sales and estate sales, those items should be marked. If they're real, they should be marked. If they're not real, they're probably not going to be marked. Put a magnet to it, and also just, educate yourself on how to determine if silver is real just by looking at it. Those are the key things that you're going to have to do to determine if an item is real or fake. So let's move on to the next thing. Okay, the next thing that we're going to be talking about is some of the bare and essential tools and gadgets or whatnot that you're going to need if you want to get into buying and selling jewelry, testing jewelry, taking apart watches, and then also just building your knowledge. Now, this is the book that I mentioned in my last video. This has more than 6,000 marks to identify your silver, ceramics, glass, and other treasures. Now, obviously, today we're not really talking about ceramics, glass, and other treasures. We're mainly talking about silver and gold, and it has tons of different markings in here, especially for silver. It's one of the best little books that I've ever found. So if you come across, let's say, for instance, a sterling silver serving dish, and on the bottom, it had a mark like this. You would not know what that mark means unless you were just super intelligent and had tons of knowledge. I don't even know what half of these marks mean, but over the years, I've kind of become familiar enough to kind of identify where an item come from, where it was actually made based on the mark. Like see, all of these are European silver marks, and I've kind of learned over the years, how to identify like American piece of silver, a European silver, things of that nature, because they just have different ways of marking items. But this is my go-to book. I usually keep it in my vehicle, and I also keep one in my office as well. You can also look up markings on the internet, but I find it much easier to be able to go right inside my book and immediately look it up. It just is so much easier for me. So if you want to go out and grab this, I will leave a link down in the description. It is one of the best books out there, especially for maker's marks and things of that nature. It covers a lot and tons of detail. It also covers costume jewelry. So if you're wanting to get into costume jewelry, which, obviously there is a ton of money to be made into costume jewelry. I find signed pieces all the time. I have, a couple hundred different pieces of costume jewelry listed on my eBay store right now, and I sell tons of that stuff. I mean, it's definitely a money maker, but it's definitely something that you're gonna have to educate yourself with, because you can't just go out there and start buying this stuff unless you know what you're actually buying, because there is a ton of junk stuff out there. Lots and lots of really low-end costume jewelry out there, and that's not the stuff that you're looking for. You're actually looking for signed pieces. I love going after vintage costume jewelry, but I'll buy anything and everything as long as it looks like something I can make money on. So the next item is this watch back remover. I already showed this to you. It comes with all of these different sizes. Pretty much this just goes on the back of the watch. Then you connect your handle to it, and it allows you to unscrew most of your screw back watches. This will cover most of the watches out there on the market today. This is a go-to tool for anybody that's a reseller, especially if you're buying and selling watches, because I can open the back up to a watch in seconds. I can change batteries out. I can look at the detail inside of the watch to determine if it's real or fake. This is just a go-to tool, so make sure you pick up one of these. I'm also going to leave a link in the description for this exact tool. Next tool that we're going to be talking about, which is a tool that I use on a regular basis, and it's very simple, is a magnet. Now this little magnet I actually picked up, I want to say that I picked it up at Home Depot, and I think it's just for putting stuff on your refrigerator, but for some reason the magnet that's in here is extremely strong. I mean, it is extremely strong, and that's why I actually like it. If you have a cheap little magnet, you can't really tell when it's actually sticking to something as good as you can if you have a magnet that is extremely strong. So this is something that I carry in my pocket every time I go sourcing. This is something that I've owned for the past 4 years, and I have never lost it, and this thing has saved me tremendously, because it's easy to just stick this to an item at a garage sale or an estate sale if you're trying to be discreet and you're not trying to draw a lot of attention to the item that you're looking at. And you can determine if that item is going to stick to a magnet or not, and that will tell you a lot based on if it sticks to this magnet or not. So this is a very good tool to use. Obviously, you might not be able to find this exact one, but go out there, get yourself a magnet, make sure the magnet is really strong. Make sure it's something small that you can hold in your hand or at least attach to your keychain. The next item here is a watch holder. Now this is just to help you out when you're working on a watch. If you remove the band of the watch and you just want to hold the watch so you can replace a battery or take the bezel off or remove the crystal, whatever the case may be, whatever it is that you're trying to do. This is just a cheap little watch holder. I think I grabbed it off of Amazon or eBay, and it works good for me. You know, I could probably get a better one, but as of right now, it does the job. The next item that I have is this. This is a different style watch back remover. Now this will remove the watch backs that have the little notches in them. So some watch backs will have the little notches and they'll be, they'll be kind of separated a little bit. And this one is adjustable. You can go back and forth. This is a very cheap one, but it works good for me. You know, I take my time. I make sure I don't scratch the watch up. So this is another good tool. The next tool, obviously, is my testing kit. This has all of the acid in it to test 10 karat, 14 karat, 18 karat, 22 karat, sterling silver, and platinum. This is a fairly decent kit. There's, when you're talking about acid kits for testing jewelry, you don't want to buy a really, really cheap kit because it's going to come with really, really cheap acid, and you don't want to. You definitely want to make sure that your acid is coming from a reputable source and you're not buying something that is not going to actually work correctly. So I always buy, quality acid and quality kits from, offline. I'm also going to put a link down in the description for that as well. Also, you're going to need a scratch block. Pretty much this is just a stone block for scratching your jewelry. As you can see, there's a few markings there. This is, this is a have-to-have item. If you're going to test jewelry and you want to test the purity of the metal, this is, a good item to have. You can also use a smaller one like this, but the smaller ones are just small. I mean, it doesn't really matter. You can get a small one or a large one. The reason that I like the larger one is so that I can scratch multiple items at once and then just put one row of acid and then figure out what's real and what's fake from there. It just works out better for me. But yeah, these are fairly cheap, but make sure you buy a quality one. I will also put a link down in the description for these as well. Now the next item that I'm going to show is just this watch kit. This comes with a few different tools, basic screwdrivers. This little tool is pretty handy. This is to pop backs off of watches, and this is just a handy tool. It makes it to where you don't damage the back and you don't damage the actual watch itself. This little kit is fairly cheap. You can get it online. I'm also going to leave a link down below for that. And the last and final item is a digital scale. Now, there's tons of different digital scales out there. I would just stick with a cheap one. I wouldn't spend a buttload of money buying a scale. Any little scale will work. You can always test it by throwing a nickel on it. But a scale is a go-to, and it's a have-to-have item, especially in the jewelry business. I use this scale more than I use anything else. Make sure you pick up a scale. Okay, so I hope that you were able to take something away from that video. Hope that you were able to learn something, and I hope that it inspires you and motivates you to learn more about jewelry, about costume jewelry, about gold and silver. There's tons of money to be made out there, and I want you to actually take this information and build on it. Go out there and do your own research. Start learning about gold. Start learning about silver. If you have anything in your home that's gold or silver, start handling it. Start becoming, become familiar with how gold feels, how silver feels. And make sure you go out and you actually, purchase the necessary items so that you can test your gold, test your silver. Like I said, I'm going to leave it down in the description below. I hope that you liked the video. I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Thanks a lot for subscribing to the channel. If you subscribed, make sure you hit that bell notification. If you're subscribed to the channel, we're going to be uploading a ton of videos here soon. I'm going to start making, hopefully a couple of videos a week, like I said previously. And until next time, folks, I'm out of here. I'm the Reseller Rockefeller. Peace.